What's up, guys? Welcome back to Fishing with Farmer. Today we're gonna go over some of the three style jigs that I like to throw in the lakes around here. These jigs are fished throughout the country, but they seem to do really well around these deep water reservoirs that we fish a lot in North Georgia. I'm gonna go over styles of heads, components, where I fish these lures or fish these jigs, and rod and line that I use. The components to the jig, we made these jigs last night. We put I like a stouter hook, like this one. It will not flex with a heavy rod, or like if we're fishing in grass or something like that. I usually have it on braid or a heavy rod to be able to pull it out of there, so that hook won't flex. And I have no issue with penetrating a fish's mouth with fluorocarbon with this hook either. So that's an owner's jig hook you can get from Do It Molds, and put in your jigs if you pour jig heads. I like a medium weed guard. Medium weed guard seems to give enough resistance to be able to come through the cover fairly easy without snagging. It is also flexible enough to when you do put a hook set on a fish that it's flexible enough to bend down and let you pin that hook in the fish's mouth, as well as it has enough force going back up to where that will have enough back pressure to hold that hook in place when you have a fish pinned by a jig. First jig style we'll talk about, probably the most popular. Most people know what it is. It's the football head jig. Where I like to fish it is around rock. Any type of rock, chunk rock, boulder rock, rock points, gravel flats, bluff walls, rock piles, any type of rock at all. If I'm fishing primarily rock, I'm going to be throwing a football head. It just seems to come through the rock really well. The football shape of the head doesn't bind up in rock crevices as easy as some of the other style heads. Also, that horizontal line tie seems to help keep the bait kind of nose down, with the trailer going to be pointed up like a crawfish in defense position. So I usually make them with a horizontal line tie. I also use these a lot when I know the fish are relating to rock. Early spring is a big time when they're in pre-spawn mode and they're moving back and they're relating to hard cover. I will throw a football jig. A second one is an Arky style head. Now, the Arky style head for me is probably my go-to jig head when I'm fishing any type of cover other than rock, or fishing multiple different types of cover. I fish this in grass. I fish this in brush piles, laydowns. I fish it around docks a lot. this is usually what's on my rod. I've got a jig tied on year round, because it seems like a jig will always pull a better quality of fish when you're fishing a jig. When you got a jig in the water, you got a chance at a monster. I like an Arky head when I fish docks for two reasons. The flatter style head of an Arky head, I feel like skips a little bit better than a football, which a football skips just fine. But the flatter, more elongated head seems to give me a little bit more footage when it comes to skipping docks. The second is an Arky head can be a dual purpose jig. I do this a lot when fish are hanging around docks from the top of the water column to the bottom. I can skip this jig and use it as a swim jig, or on the same dock, if I can't get them from right up underneath the pontoons or up towards the top of the water, I can skip this jig under the dock and fish bottom. I can imitate anywhere from bluegill, frogs. I can imitate a lot of things with this one jig. That's why I like to throw it around docks and stuff like that. It's because I can make this 4 baits in one. Most of the time when I'm skipping docks and swimming it at the same time, I've got a double-tailed grub on the back. It's got a little bit of kick to it, not a whole lot of kick, but every once in a while I have a cross style bait that's got a real wide action kick, a lot of action to it. But most of the time it's just a double tail grub when I'm swimming it and fishing it on bottom around docks. Brush, that head right there seems to come through brush really a whole lot easier than a football head. Football head seems to catch a lot more. You have to pop it loose a little bit. An Arky style head seems to come through the cover a whole lot better, or come through wood a little better. And grass, the more pointed the head is, the easier it is to come through grass. And I can use this again as a swim jig in grass if I need it, or the fish are showing me that they're on a swimming bait instead of a bottom based bait. Third one, I did not make this head. I didn't make any ball heads last night, but this is a ball head finesse jig. This particular jig is the ballin' out jig, designed by Gerald Swindle, who's probably one of the best jig fishermen on tour. He designed this bait. Finesse jig for me is one of those jigs you can throw on high pressure water, or when the water's cold or really hot. I only usually pair a double tail grub to the back of these. I don't really variate much from the double tail grub with the finesse jig. But the finesse jig comes through wood really well with that ball head. So it's a good bait for laydowns and skipping around docks that have posts and dock brush where people have buried brush at the front of the dock or at the side of the dock. The ball head finesse jig usually does really, really well on those high pressured lakes where they see a full body jig day in and day out. It downsized to a finesse jig, and it pulls a bite when a regular or a full size jig won't. The finesse jig actually has a vertical line tie, which I think helps with a ball head because it's picking the nose up and you can drag it a little bit better on the bottom, keep bottom contact. But I'm still fishing this in the areas I would fish the Arky style head. But it's when the fish are being finicky and don't want a full-size jig, I'll drop down to a finesse jig a lot of the times, especially on the waters that are highly pressured, that see a lot of fishing pressure. Weights, I don't variate much from 2 different weights because a lot of the areas I fish do not have grass where you do need, or matted grass where you need the ounces and stuff like that to get through. My 2 are a 3/8 ounce and a 1/2 ounce. I'll fish 3/8 ounce most 90% of the time. If I got a lot of wind or a lot of current or something like that, I'll throw a 1/2 ounce, but 90% of the time I'm throwing a 3/8. Color wise, I keep it very simple with my colors. Green pumpkins, browns, black and blue if I've got stained water. This time of year I'll throw a little bit of a bold color into my natural jigs, like this is the Okeechobee crawl. My version of it is just green pumpkin and blue, not a speckly blue, but it's just a solid blue. Seems to do real well in cold water this time of year. In depths, deep depths, shows up a little bit better, that darker color does. And then PB&J is another really good colder water jig color. This color actually really shines on Lake Lanier in the North Georgia mountains. You get those specific colors that work in certain lakes, and like I said, this one's Lake Lanier. The Okeechobee crawl is a bait that absolutely it gets bit a lot more consistent for me in Carter's Lake, another predominant spot bass lake. I've got a spring crawl that I make. It's a green jig with a couple strands of chartreuse. It shines in Chattooga, Blue Ridge, Burton. I've caught a lot of good fish on Burton with it. Chickamauga, it seems to do well in Chickamauga. Another one that does well in Chickamauga is the PB&J. Gunnersville varies from black and blue in the springtime when it's real dirty to like an Okeechobee crawl. I do really well on Gunnersville with that. Line, I don't variate much from my line. I like a 17-pound a Braze X from Seagar. If the water's really clear, I'll drop down to 15, but 90% of the time I've got it on 17-pound. A Braze X, a 7.6 medium heavy rod. You can go down to a 7.3 or a 7.1. I just like a 7.6. It fits me really well. A little bit taller. So it gives me it's a rod that fits me. A rod that fits you, but in a medium heavy power for jig fishing when you're open water jig fishing or brush pile or fishing docks. Medium heavy. You get into grass, a little bit thicker grass, then you'll bump up probably to a heavy rod and probably some braid, but that's where that hook comes in. That heavy rod and braid's not going to bend that hook out. Gear ratio, I've got 2 jig rods. One's got a 7:1 to 1 and the other one's an 8:1 to 1. I like a fast gear ratio reel with my jigs, because a lot of times if you're dragging bottom with it and you pause it and the fish pick it up and they start to swim off with it, you can catch up to the fish and put a hook set on them. And also with the little faster gear ratio reel, like I said, with the Arky head, because I like to swim it, I can keep it up towards the top of the water column if I have to. But other than that, guys, that's my 3 jigs that I throw throughout the year. And those 3 jigs right there will catch you fish all year. Way of work it, most of the time it's just dragging bottom. You're just counting rocks. If you can't feel bottom, you're fishing too fast. Other than that, I'll pump it just a little bit, pop my rod. If I hit a piece of cover, I might pop my rod to pop it off of it to act like the crawfish trying to run. Or if it's late season, middle of the summer into the fall, when the fish are a little more active, they're feeding up, or they're not lethargic like they are in the wintertime, I will stroke a jig in deep water. That's when you pump your rod really hard like you're fishing a flutter spoon. And I always pump it just twice. Pump it once, pause about a second, and then hit it again. It's acting like the jig or the crawfish is trying to run away from the fish, and it will trigger a reaction strike from the fish. They'll usually hit it on the fall back down. But that's how I fish a jig. That is the 3 styles of jig that I fish and why I fish them the way I fish them. So hopefully that helps y'all out. We'll see you on the water.